Here. And we're live, man.
Good afternoon, friends. This is Richard Irvin, Mayor of the City of Aurora, coming to you live. And I got some guests with me here that I'll introduce. I got the Chief of Police, Kristen Zeman, and Commander Keith Cross, also candidate to be the Deputy Chief of Police coming up the next couple months here in the City of Aurora. You know, we just wanted to come on today and talk to the people, talk to our residents about the experience that we've all gone through with COVID-19, not just our personal experiences, but the experiences that we've been hearing about in the community, from the police perspective, from the city's perspective, with me as mayor. I mean, we're up to 100 people that have been diagnosed with COVID-19 in the city of Aurora. 100, and that number keeps going up exponentially by the day. We've unfortunately had 3 deaths because of complications with COVID-19. And oftentimes what you hear when you tune in to the news, or you tune in to social media, are the negativity. And this is no joke. This is, and we'll talk about some of the symptoms that we all experience and what we've gone through. But also, I think we've got to bring up the positive, out of this, that there are people like the chief, like the deputy chief, Keith Cross, that have experienced this. And although we all went through, I can no way to say it, went through hell and back. At one point I felt like I had gone to the edge, and I was hanging off and kind of clawed my way back from the edge, but we did overcome, and we got better. And we want to let you know that should someone out there get diagnosed, that you got to hang in there, you got to be strong, you got to overcome this fight. Now, we're all going to have stories that we're going to tell, and we're lucky that we're here to tell those stories, because those individuals that I talked about earlier, those 3 Aurorans, aren't going to have a story to tell, because they COVID-19, unfortunately, was the last story they'll tell, based on them passing because of complications of the virus. And I think what we also need to talk about is the fact that this is real serious. Oftentimes you see the news and media about this, and it's hard to put perspective. It's hard to put a face with it, because maybe you or your family members haven't experienced it yet. But I think all 3 of us who have all been diagnosed and come through and been experienced recognize that this is real. So we're going to be talking about the governor's order, the stay-at-home order, the shelter-in-place order, the everything we need to do to make sure we practice social distancing, and just the community at large, taking this seriously. Also on the phone with us, that you don't see pictured, is our Director of Communication, Clayton Muhammad, and he'll be taking some questions a little later from folks that are out in the community. But first, let's start with a little bit of introduction and talk about some of the things. And again, all 3 of us may have experienced a little bit different symptoms, but as again, this was real. I think Keith might have, of all of us, taken it the hardest, and me maybe in the middle. And the chief, although not as serious as us, but recognize the importance of still of practicing social distancing and staying at home, because just because she didn't experience the symptoms the way Keith and I did, if she were in contact with someone that had not been diagnosed yet, and they were got COVID-19 based on coming in contact with her, that person may have experienced it a whole lot worse. So let's start off with Chief Zeman, and talk a little bit about COVID-19, how it affected you, your family, and just the fears we're dealing with in the community.
Sure. So the irony of this whole thing is that the command staff saw early on, just like you and the rest of our city leadership, that this was coming towards us, right? And so the ironic, and I use that word, really precisely, is that we all got together early on because the first thing that we thought about was protecting our police officers, protecting our firefighters and EMT, protecting all of our citizens. So in thinking about that and doing that, what did we all do? We all convened together in a room and started coming up with plans on how to keep our officers safe. One of the first things that we did for our contingency plan was to go to digital roll calls. So we don't have 30 officers in one room. And we ceased all training. We put a pause on that. And that was our first contingency. Our second contingency that we decided while planning in that room was that we were going to go to 12-hour shifts. And we wanted to make sure that our officers were going to have ample time to rest and to get better should they be afflicted by this, so they could also take care of their families. And so in all of us convening together, and Mayor, we all sat, we went to your conference room and then we were in our conference room planning this. And this was before, it even started to rise. And in doing that, we all most likely infected one another. And so I think that there's a few lessons in there. Number one, preparation is key, because we really have been doing a great job. Our police officers, our first responders, our firefighters, EMTs, all of our staff, all of the city of Aurora have been doing a wonderful job. But in that planning process, we infected ourselves. So what happened with me, and you are absolutely right, I am actually surprised to see Commander, soon to be Deputy Chief Keith Cross, sitting upright, because this man has been down horizontal for 3 weeks. And so what ultimately happened was, it started out as what I felt like was this head cold. And we all know in Chicago weather, it's, it's up and down, right? And so I always suffer from those sinuses and that head, with the temperature change. So I just assumed that it was a head cold. And so I ignored it. And I thought, well, those aren't symptoms. And then as my symptoms started to progress, it was right around that time that Commander Cross was positive. And that it was right about that time, the day that I found out he was positive, was actually the morning after, that I was down with the fever and with cough. But I never got it as bad in my respiratory, in my chest. Like, I didn't have trouble breathing. Mine was mostly just cough and chills and fever. And I don't know about you guys, but the interesting thing about this for me was, I would wake up maybe 3 days later and be like, wow, I feel kind of okay today. And then the next day I would go down with another fever. So for me, it was about 10 days of up and down, but it by no means it was as bad as a lot of people have. And I was actually surprised when I got the phone call from the health department telling me I was positive. I thought, I was like, oh, I don't have those respiratory symptoms, so I'm probably not. So that's just a little bit of my story, but definitely not as bad as others.
Keith, we'll go to you next before I talk a little bit about my symptoms. And I've been checking on you, just to see, how you're doing and making sure you're going to be able to make it out of the woods. And I know, and you can tell a story, but at one point you actually had to go to the emergency room, because you were dehydrated. So why don't you just tell a little bit about some of the what you experienced and the symptoms that you had to endure?
First of all, Mayor, I just wanted to thank you for having me on to be able to talk about my experience. I started out, I ran myself down, basically. My immune system was low. I had done a lot of work the week before and I planned on catching up on my rest on the weekend. Unfortunately, things didn't work out that way. I had to go out of town and came back. The following Monday, I started to have a little cough and thought I was coming down with a cold because my body was run down and I felt really tired, really just tired. So I just tried to power myself through. The next day, Tuesday, was pretty much the same, a little bit of a cough, but I just didn't feel myself. And so after work that day, I came home and just tried to eat something. And that was my first indication. When I tried to eat dinner, I really didn't have an appetite. So I said, I'm gonna lay down. I gotta go to bed early just to catch up on my rest. And that night, I woke up, I went to bed about 7 o'clock and I woke up about 9:30. And I felt like a truck had hit me. And I was vomiting, I had fever, had a lot of different things going on. So that was my first trip to the emergency room. And in talking to the nurse, I had all the symptoms. I had the fever, like I said, the vomiting, my fierce headache. I had a fierce headache. I had a lot of the different symptoms. The only thing I really didn't have was the respiratory distress. And that's when the nurse gave me the test for the flu, didn't have the flu. And she said, if you test positive for the flu, then you probably don't have the COVID-19. Well, unfortunately, I tested negative, and she said, I think you have it. But they didn't give me a test at that point in time. Went back
They
home.
didn't have that back then. They didn't even have tests to give. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know if they had tests or not, but I know that they were very selective. Basically, they had to lobby to the Illinois Department of Public Health. And basically, they were told that because I wasn't in respiratory distress, I couldn't get the test. So
It's a shame.
my problem with that was I didn't want to, if I did have it, I wanted to notify my coworkers because I knew I had been around my coworkers and but my boss and the chief, and I wanted to get the word to them as quickly as possible that, hey, I tested positive for this, so that you guys and my other coworkers wouldn't spread it. If you had it, you could go get tested. But it didn't work out that way. Fortunately, a couple of days later, I was able to go get the test, and it came back within a day, and they said, yeah, you tested positive for the virus. Now, much like the chief, the first few days of my experience, I was sick, but then a couple of days later, I felt like I was getting better. And through this whole time, once I found out I was positive, I was talking with the health department, and they basically told me that from their experiences, people will often get sick, then they'll get better, and then they'll get sick again. And that's exactly kind of what happened with me. I had a few days where I felt like I was okay, but then things just kind of fell off a cliff, and I got worse than I was even in the initial period of time. So I stopped eating for about 4 days. I just didn't have an appetite. I couldn't sleep for about 3 days. I had incoherent thoughts, things that I was thinking about I knew weren't reality, but they were still in my mind, and that was somewhat scary. I was confused. There were, like I said, for a period of about 3 days, I was very sensitive to like noise and different things. So I basically stared at a wall from sun up to sundown. I never went to sleep for about 3 days. And
Wow.
for about 4 or 5 days, I was nauseous the whole time, even though I had nausea medication that was given to me at the emergency room. I couldn't shake the nausea feeling. And so I just laid in my bed, really not being able to do anything for about 3 or 4 days. And then
Wow, man.
eventually, I started to feel a little better. Now, fortunately for me, I was able to drink, but during that 3 or 4 day period, I was experiencing some other things, and that's when I had to make a trip to the emergency room because I got dehydrated. I have a rare blood deficiency, and if I don't drink and eat, then I get dehydrated quicker than a normal person would. So that's when I went to the hospital, and they gave me fluids, and told me to go back home. So I went back home, and there were a couple of other rough days after that before the curve started to go the other way, fortunately. So
Man, oh, wow. That's a scary story, brother. And mine is very similar. Let me tell you some of my. So I remember when you got tested that Friday when it came back that it was positive. Matter of fact, and I went the very next day to get tested. I remember the chief and I pulled up into the drive-through at around right about the same time. In fact, she was a little upset with me that looked like I was trying to cut in front of her car. So I had to back up a little bit and let her go forward. But at that time, I was feeling cold symptoms, and one of the reasons that we made it a point to go get tested is because of the fact that you tested positive. But the reality is, we don't know for sure if we contracted the virus from you. It could have been, but it could have been we'd had it maybe I had it a week before and gave it to you, or when you had to travel to New York to get your son from college, who knows? But, you know, the reality is that's why I went and got tested, because you got tested. Now, I didn't get my results back in 24 hours. I didn't get my results back for a whole 7 days. And now I'm hearing sometimes the results take up to, 10 days to 2 weeks to get back, So, after I took that test, like I said, before I took it, I was feeling cold symptoms, just like a head cold, and just didn't feel right, a little unsettled. But not long after I took the test, I went downhill. I mean, I had an extreme headache, to the point where I couldn't even think straight. And if I stood up, I would get dizzy, and I had incoherent thoughts just like you did. Now, I had these night tremors where I was shaking at night. I slept a whole lot. Matter of fact, at one time I felt like I slept almost 18 hours, in a day. But when I'd wake up, I'd be so hot because I had this high temperature that my clothes would be wet. Now, one time I took off my shirt and it felt like I had run it underwater. It was so wet. But at the same time, my lower extremities were freezing cold. My feet were so cold that I had to wear gym shoes at night when I slept to keep my feet warm, because socks just weren't enough. I'd had a couple pair of socks on, and just weren't staying warm. So I had to sleep at night with my shoes on. My teeth ached. Like I had a toothache in every tooth. My gums ached. My eyeballs ached. It was the strangest feeling, like they were about going to pop out of my head or something. And I remember having crazy thoughts. And when I was, like dizzy and disoriented as well. I had absolutely no appetite. You say you didn't eat for like 4 days. Man, I didn't eat for like 7, 8 days straight. I tried. I just had absolutely no appetite. No appetite, and water even tasted nasty to me. Luckily I was able to drink some Gatorade. For some reason, the flavor in that, helped me to drink it, and it stayed down. Um, Man, it was the most one of the most unsettling feelings that I've had. I had I lost my sense of taste and smell. I don't know if that happened to either of you, but I couldn't smell. I couldn't taste, I couldn't smell anything, but didn't matter. I didn't have an appetite, at all anyway. And this, as I said, and then I, just like you guys, I got better, and I said, oh man, this is, after about 3 days, I felt good. I even got up, and this was my mistake, got up and said I was feeling better, and started trying to work out a little bit, and just be active, because I thought it was over. And then it came back even harder. I mean, it came back so strong. So I was like, oh, when I get better this time, and there's no way I'm going to jump right back, and I'm going to ease my way back into things. And it got harder. So I had this reprieve for a couple days, and then it got even worse. And, I was down for even longer, and that's why I didn't eat for that, that almost 8 days straight. I lost 10 pounds. I just lost 10 pounds. Who sits in the house, and loses weight, man? I lost 10 pounds just like that. And I think, what's important for us to tell this story is to let our community know that this is for real. This isn't just something you see on the news that happens to the other guy. This happens to us in our community. People that people that that man, I've known you since high school. Chief, I've known you for 20 years, since we worked together years ago at the riverboat when you were a young cadet, and I was security there. These are it has a face now. And I think it's important for us to talk to the community about this, to let them know that you got to follow our health officials, mandates. You got to follow the governor's order. You got to make sure we shelter in place, make sure that we flatten this curve. And, I know we don't all know what that really means. It sounds, what do you flatten what curve? How long are we staying in the house? Well, the best way to explain it, and you guys can jump in here, is if this virus doesn't have a host to jump to, eventually it'll just die out. And if we are naturally, social beings. We like to be around each other, talking to each other, hugging, each other, shaking each other's hands. That's just who we are, as human beings. But if we don't practice social distancing and staying at home and staying away from the people that we love and and want to be around, we're going to give that virus another host to jump to, and and then it's going to be the next person, and grow exponentially. So staying away from each other, staying sheltered in place, is helping us to beat this coronavirus.
Yeah, and I think you have a very good point there, not only about people who are asymptomatic but carry it. Like a lot of us, our kids are home right now. My kids are here from college and they are healthy, and they're like, "I'm fine. I don't understand." We have a tendency to downplay it because,
Absolutely.
and then again, I had a very mild case. This is most certainly not to downplay anything, because there are so many people out there who are dying from this. And I think the thing that we have to remember is not to be selfish when it comes to, I got to go out and socialize. I want to go out and get mine and my toilet paper, and all of those things, because we potentially are passing it on to someone else. And
Absolutely.
this is a moment where we have to stop and we have to think about human transference and what that means, and how we pass not only good things, kindness onto each other, but we also pass, viruses onto each other as well. And so we have to be very conscious of that as we move about the world.
Yeah, I get it. I understand. It's very difficult for us because we're, human beings are social and we want to be around people and do things. But the reality of it is you have to keep your circle small. Like you alluded to, Mayor, earlier, I don't know how I got the virus, but I can tell you, I really wasn't around a lot of people. When I went to New York, I was in the car by myself. The only time I was around people was to get out and get gas and go to the bathroom, and that was pretty much it. So I was around a small group of people, but even even though somewhere in between there, I may have gotten the virus, So
Could have been on that gas handle, man. When
it
you
could have been
touch,
on the accident.
yeah,
And I'll say this: at that time, looking at the news and different things, I was washing my hands and putting Purell on my hands more than any time,
than
in
we've
my
ever
life.
done. Exactly right,
My
right.
hands were raw, pretty much. So I really don't know, but you have to do what you can do to reduce your chances of getting it, because once you get it, you've gotten it. And unfortunately, everyone hasn't been as fortunate as we have to be able to recover from the virus. And so I just want people to do their due diligence and doing what you can do to avoid your chances of getting it.
Absolutely. And it takes a, so Chief, what now? Where do we go from here, as a community, as
Sure. So one thing I want to say to the community, and I know that you share in this sentiment, is thank you to our community, because by and large, everyone has been so cooperative. We've made a new CAD ticket for disbursement, and everyone that we come across who is, riding the line of that social distancing and, groups of people together, when our officers show up, we are met not with resistance. We are met with, okay, what, we'll go on our way. So thank you to the community who are taking this serious, and also who are parenting in that way too, and explaining to kids, this is what can happen if we spread it around. So that's the first thing that I want to say. Second is to our first responders out there. I cannot thank them enough. We know how to handle law enforcement. We know how to deal with crime, high crime incidents. We handled a mass shooting, and then yet this is something that we are like, whoa, what are we doing here? And and we have attempted to figure it out as we've gone along. And what I have found about the resiliency of this police department, of our fire department in this community, is exactly what I already knew, is that we bend, but we do not break. And we will figure this out as we go along. So the resilience has been absolutely wonderful. The other thing is about mental health. We talk about our physical health. We went down, and there's so many people that are probably going to, to get this virus, or people that are going to come through it. Hopefully everyone can beat it. But we also have to think about our mental health in this arena as well. And being cooped up in a house, sometimes can mess with people, not being out, as you both mentioned, we're social animals. And I think what we've come to do is take for granted all of those times we've shake hands, and all of those times we interact with people. So I think that we also need to check in with ourselves and our family members, make sure everyone is okay. And if you can try to find a way to change your paradigm about this situation and look for some of the positives. For me, my kids are home. Now they would not agree with this sentiment, but man, when I wake up and see them every morning, I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And, you know, and so there's a lot of family time going on, and you can be creative. I love the creativity on the internet and the memes, and people are just, you know, they're doing wonderful things to keep their mental health. And I think that that's so important. So those three things, that's how we move forward. We're going to get through this. We just have to get through it together.
Yeah. Commander Cross, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, like the chief said, what a lot of people don't know is the officers on our police department, they had their lives turned upside down in about 48 hours because they went from working one shift to having to completely work a different shift in 4 additional hours. So a lot of people had to rearrange childcare and different things that they had going on at a moment's notice. And I really appreciate that. And they did it willingly, knowing that we had a mission to accomplish. And they've gone out and they're accomplishing the mission, and they're continuing to give citizens of Aurora quality police services. And I take my hat off to them. But the community as well, they've been great. Like the chief said, we really haven't had a lot of problems. You know, we have seen some gatherings, small gatherings, but when we've approached people and reminded them about the social distancing, they have been very cooperative with us, and you know, we're very grateful for that. So.
You know, the reality is, if you look at this in a, you know, microcosm and how it grows out, our city shut down, our state shut down, our country shut down, the world shut down. You know, this is something that I don't know that any of us ever thought we would experience in our lifetimes, and hopefully we won't experience something like this again in our lifetimes, and we'll grow stronger from it. You say there's resilience, you know, and I'll just talk from here locally. We are Aurora strong, and we're going to remain Aurora strong. You know, I mean, you know, I know that started Aurora strong based on the mass shooting at Pratt, but you know, it will continue because whether we're dealing with the finances, and that's an issue we're going to have to deal with, you know, with our government. How are we going to continue to run government, whether we're dealing with our community and this COVID-19 virus and people getting sick? We will overcome. You know, this is something we will get by, and it ain't going to be easy. You know, we're going to have to put our brains together and, you know, and come together and figure out how to make it happen, but we will figure it out, and we're going to be stronger because of it. You know, and I just can't focus enough that we practice what our health officials tell us to, you know, the sheltering in place, social distancing, making sure that if you do have to go out, you constantly wash your hands, don't touch your face, because that is, you know, if you touch something, a surface, and it has the virus on, and you touch your face, you know, there it is, you know, now you've been exposed. You know, use hand sanitizer whenever you get an opportunity, and just work with our community. If the more we work together and explain to each other the importance of it, and remind each other constantly of the importance of doing this so we can flatten the curve and kill this virus before it jumps to another host, the better off we'll all be.
Absolutely.
Clayton, are there any questions out there?
Yes, sir. Yes, we have a number of questions from the media and the community. First, there's more of a compliment in the question. The question is, are you sure you were sick? Because you guys all look pretty darn good.
You know, I'm looking at myself in the screen there, man. I'm looking at some bags. I need some sun.
So, I'm sure that was unmistakable.
Hey, man, I was sick. Oh, brother, like I said, I feel like I've been to the edge and back. So, and what about you, Keith? Man, I know you took it the hardest, brother.
Yeah, I put it this way. I feel a whole lot better than I did about a week ago. I still have a few residual things, some little sneezing, and my, you know, some of the tasks that you take for granted, things that you do every day, I find myself getting fatigued doing them.
Absolutely, yeah.
But other than that, you know, I'm doing a lot better than I was.
Now, it's funny you should mention that, man. When a couple days ago, maybe 4 days ago, when I started doing these video conferences again and having meetings, city meetings, man, if a video conference lasted an hour, when I was done, I had to lay down for a while, man, to get my energy back, man. I had to take a nap, you know, like I was a child or something. But day by day, I get stronger and stronger. But then I'm not going to push it this time. I'm just going to take my time and, and do this thing right.
Let's segue into a question from the Daily Herald. Are all three of you back at work? Is it a full-time? How have you transitioned back into your normal routines?
Yeah.
Chief?
Yeah, the health department signed off on me. My physician signed off, and so what we're trying to do is exactly what we're trying to mirror with our entire force. We are trying to work from home as much as we can. Fortunately, because we are now in a world of video conferencing in Zoom, so we have tried to. Some of us will go to the office, and so we try to alternate on what days. Casey is not back yet; he's not ready. I don't think to leave the house, but yeah, I'm back. And so, yeah, we're just alternating days and trying to get as much work done. I got out in squad car the last couple of days, which was really nice to get some fresh air and also to go pick up some things that people have donated to the police department. So people have found N95 masks in their basement and gloves. And so we've got businesses that are calling us and saying, hey, we have these, do you want them? And so it was so great to get out yesterday and to go pick those up personally. So thank you to everyone who are making those donations to our police department and our fire department. My cup runneth over.
Absolutely. And I was specifically told by my co-workers, don't bring your butt back in here. So I'm gonna hold off for a few more days until I get rid of this cough and this sneezing, because nobody wants me in the office coughing and sneezing. But I do what I can from home.
You know, I have been released by the health department, and I guess what they've said was, you know, you got to wait 3 days after you had your last fever. But you know, the different, you know, opinions. It could be 3 days, it could be 10 days. I think I'm coming up on my 8th day to where there is no way that I, you know, after I haven't had a fever, had any symptoms, there's no way I'm still contagious. So I'm going to wait to the longest period before I'm around people to make sure that, you know, even there's no residual COVID-19 or coronavirus in my blood that I could pass on to somebody else. But I'm almost to that point of maybe a day or two from that point where I am no longer a contagious person. Now, because we all got this virus now, you know, leading experts say if this virus acts like every other virus throughout history, that we now are going to be immune and we're not going to be able to, you know, get COVID-19 again. So we're all invincible now.
I'm bulletproof.
We're bulletproof. So, you know, go
Hold the phones. Hold the phone.
hold the phones up.
I just talked to someone today who mentioned that there was something in South Korea, I think, where people had tested positive, they had gotten sick, then they tested negative, and then they retested positive again. So
Oh, come on, man.
I know it. I was disappointed myself. But
And that may be something similar to when you thought you were getting better, and then right when you thought, you know, it came right back. But
more than likely what the deal is.
Exactly right. But, you know, at some point, you know, this is going to be totally out of our system. We're not going to, you know, spread it. I'll still just, you know, wear masks, you know, because, you know, as a leader of a community, we're asking other people to wear, you know, masks or some type of cloth in their face to protect themselves and make sure that they don't, you know, continue to spread the virus. You know, I'll do the same. But I expect, you know, based on, you know, what I've heard from Dr. Fauci, who is like the leading, you know, medical professional that tells us what's going on, that, you know, we expect that we'll be immune to it in the future and not be able to get it. And hopefully, you know, at least, you know, after these 10 days or however long period of time, 2 weeks, not be able to pass it on to anybody else. Any other questions, Clay?
Speaking of that, thank you to all the medical professionals as well.
Oh my gosh, yes.
First responders, but it goes without saying that, you know, real heroes don't wear capes. So to all the medical professionals on the front line who are out there taking good care of us, thank you. And to the health department as well, who has been magnificent. You know, they've been absolutely wonderful to work with. And I'm speaking particularly King County, that's the largest portion of our city is in. And we've been working very closely with them and the other counties, and they're doing a great job.
Incredible.
Clay.
Very busy at this point in time.
As we go into our last 10 minutes here, Commander Cross, you mentioned in 48 hours, things change for APD. So questions for APD, what does that look like? What's changed, Chief and soon-to-be Deputy Chief? How are things different at the police department?
That's a great question. So again, as I mentioned, is we're having digital roll calls, and anything that is training related that we can convey digitally, we are doing that. Our 12-hour shifts were put into place. We were working 8-hour shifts at the time. So when Commander Cross said that people's lives changed in 48 hours, he's not kidding. We had to scramble to do that. So what has changed is not necessarily enforcement, though. So I don't want people to think that we're not doing anything out there, because there are still people, unfortunately, who are choosing to break the law, and we are still out there. That is the very nature of our job. But I will say calls for service have gone down, but officers are still out there. I want the community to know that they are just as safe as they always were, and they are in good hands with our officers. And going forward, we're going to keep doing what we're doing. As I said, every day we meet, myself and Commander Cross, Deputy Chief Jackson, and the rest of the commanders, we all meet and we confer about calls for service and our operations, and we look at what needs to be changed, what needs to be altered. And this is what I'm saying in the middle of a crisis: is you have to remain open to change. You have to be able to assess and then move, pivot. And that's exactly what we've been doing. When this ends, I don't know. This is the lingering question mark. I don't know when we're going to return to normal. So we're going to continue to assess the situation and then, see what that looks like, as we take guidance from our governor and from, the science.
Next question. Oh, go ahead, Commander.
As the chief said, I think one of the biggest things for us is we really just don't get a chance to see each other as much as we used to. The officers aren't around the station. Things are just being done a little bit unconventionally. But they have, like I said, they have adapted and adjusted, and they're out there doing their thing just like they were before. So the biggest issue probably, or the biggest change, is we don't see each other. That's one of the biggest things. And also, I want to make sure we thank the community, the Naperville Islamic Center, and also CPAAA, Citizens Police Academy, and other people and organizations who have gone out of their way to help and are donating lunches and different things like that for our officers out there working.
Rulins.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Really appreciate their efforts in helping making things easier for us.
Thanks for feeding us.
Two more questions this last 5 minutes here. This is from a teacher. So all three of you graduated from here. Got 2 Tomcats, 1 Black Hawk. But can you talk to the youth? Because often we're talking to adults. Can you encourage the youth? Can you give them some hope, particularly the class of 2020, high school and college, who some of their milestones are gone? Can you just give them some hope and some that Aurora strong resilience?
And I got a son that is in the class of 2020. He'll be graduating, supposed to be graduating this year. And although I'll tell you this, although I know a lot of these young kids are looking at this as, free time or party, there's no school, there's really nothing going on, let's hang out. I need them to take this seriously. I need them to recognize that what they do doesn't just affect them, it affects their families, it affects their mother and father, their grandparents, older brothers and sisters, or even younger brothers and sisters. This virus doesn't discriminate, even though it seemingly, based on statistics, affects people of an older age. It also, we've heard stories of young people, being affected and actually being seriously sickened, and even in some cases dying throughout our country. So, yeah, I need them to take this serious. And as far, as school goes, I know a lot of our students, like my son, are doing their studies, online. Just hang in there. Although 2020 is a year that'll go down in history, we'll never forget it. It's one that they'll always remember. That'll always be part of their history as well. So take school, even online, seriously. Take this virus seriously, and let's all work together to make a difference. What do you think, Chief?
Yeah. So what I would say, first of all, go Blackhawks, since I'm outnumbered by Tomcats.
Yes, you are.
Blackhawk Nation.
You're flanked.
Yeah. So again, take it seriously. That we can't emphasize that enough. But also, you know what? This is a lesson in life, and this is one of many lessons that will come our way. Right? Is that there are things that are going to happen in our lives that we cannot control. And you've got, Commander Cross's son Devin, who's a D1 athlete. My daughter was supposed to go to Taiwan over the summer, and all of that's been canceled. And so you look at the things that they're missing, but you also have to recognize that you have to be able to be resilient and to adapt to changing situations. And that means taking a look at your situation and understanding, okay, I cannot control this, but what I can do is I can control myself and
Absolutely.
how I deal with the situation. The greatest of human freedoms is to be able to choose our response in any situation. And so I've watched my kids, they have a routine. That is one thing I would say, stay on a routine. They get up in the morning and they've got their classes and they stay busy. And then they also make time, get out and get some exercise, move, a body in motion stays in motion. So keep your 6-foot distance rule, but get out and get some exercise and just take care of one another. Fortunately, we have technology. That is one thing that we have that can bridge that gap. And so we can communicate with people in these little, mosaic boxes, but it's still social. So keep doing what you're doing and reaching out to people. And you know what? The only way to get to the other side of this is to go through it.
Commander?
Yeah, I'd just like to echo the chief and the mayor's comments. My heart goes out to the class of 2020 because I know that they have missed out on some things and are missing out on some of the memories that they should not be missing out on. And it's no fault of their own. But I would use this as a lesson. Life is extremely tough, and you're going to have some other obstacles in your life later on down the road. And you have to develop that mental toughness to overcome some of these things that you just can't control. And this is one of those things. But you have a long life ahead of you. A lot of good things are going to happen. Just take this for what it is. It is a serious issue, and we want you to take it seriously. But it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the road, and we have better days that are coming. So
Absolutely. Better
kind
days
of
ahead.
focus on your future and the things that you want to accomplish later on in life, and I think things will work out for you. Before I run, I just want to thank my wife and my son for taking care of me through this difficult time. I want to thank all of my friends and coworkers and the chief and mayor, all the people that prayed for me and sent me text messages and calls and cards, dropped things off at my house. There was an outpouring of love, and I think that really helped me get through the rough time that I had. So I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you to all of you for all of your support. It's very much appreciated.
Absolutely.
Mayor, we're going to come back full circle as we close. You talked about your relationship with Chief Zeman, soon to be Deputy Chief Cross, for decades, and you've spoken out on social media and other about two topics that are not COVID related, but the appointment of Keith Cross as Deputy Chief of the department, and you've certainly expressed your support of Chief Zeman's bid, but also the love that we have for her in Aurora. Can you talk about both of those as we close?
You know what? I remember when Chief Zeman first came into my office, and she said I was the first person, to say that she told that she had the opportunity to apply as Chicago's police chief. And at that time, she said, "Oh, it's pie in the sky. It's just I'm just going to apply. I'm sure I won't make it that far at all." And I remember, she asking, "What do you think about this?" And I immediately said, "You got to do this. I mean, you have to, and I know you love Aurora and your dream was to be the chief of police in Aurora, and you've done a great job, at this. But if you have the ability to go to a large city like Chicago, the third largest city in the nation, to represent, to help fix their issues, plus represent Aurora because you are, from here, man, you're going to help put Aurora on the map." And as she kept going through the process and getting closer and closer and getting down to the final three, we were all like, "Oh my gosh."
What was that?
Oh my gosh. And I continued to support her the whole way, hoping that if this was a dream of hers, that that she'd get it, and we were going to support her wholeheartedly. And, even though, another person was chosen out of the final three, we couldn't be more proud of Kristen Zeman and how she has represented the city of Aurora throughout this country. I mean, top three throughout this country of people interested in running a city the size of and with the prestige of Chicago. Oh my gosh, I personally am happy that you didn't get the job, because I know you're going to stay right here at home and bring that superstar, keep that superstar status right here, and help us continue to run the city as you've been doing. But I couldn't be more proud, of what you've accomplished, and everything you've gone through to be recognized. Just not just for applying for the chief of Chicago, but the fact that you're in that spot is because of everything you've been doing in Aurora as chief, that highlighted your accomplishments, that put you on the national scene where people are looking at you to be in that position. So kudos to you and everything you've doing. I'm going to continue to support you, your dreams and your ideas. Hey, A-Town love. I'm here for you, lady. So although, we supported her wholeheartedly for her bid, for Chicago chief, and I wanted her to get that position for her, in her future. I'm absolutely elated to know that you're going to be staying here and working here in the city of Aurora.
Well, thank you. And you know what? That's what leadership looks like right here, Mayor Irvin, is when you can go to your boss and say, listen, there's an opportunity. And you say, you said, you got to do it. Aurora leaders. And then when I went to my team, my brothers, I don't have any brothers. I'm an only child, but Deputy Chief Jackson, Commander Cross, Commander Fichtel, Commander Dorzaf, those guys that's what it feels like for me to have brothers. And when I went to them and they said the same thing, and when this community said, listen, you got to do it. That's what love and support looks like. And so, you know what? I fell short, but I'm proud. I'm so proud of trying, and I'm re-energized to be here. And I also want to say, I want to give a special shout out to Deputy Chief Keith Jackson, who just turned in his retirement letter. I pretended to be sick so I could avoid him turning in his letter. But my first day back to work, I knew that he's been planning on retiring for a year now. And so when he handed me his letter, I knew what it was. So of course I put it in the shredder. But the honest truth is he has been absolutely magnificent. He's been a wonderful teammate for me and for our command staff, for our police department, for this city. And I am so sad to see him leave, but I'm also honored that Commander Keith Cross is going to step up in that position of deputy chief. I can't think of two better men, that I get to spend my career with shoulder to shoulder. So thanks to all.
And if you don't mind, let me comment on Keith Cross as well. Now, me and Keith Cross, as you pointed out, are both Tomcats, so we go way back to high school, black and red. We both be black and red, deep down, EA, believe it. But, now Keith is a 1 year ahead of me in school, but, we knew each other, growing up, just in the community and whatnot. And, when Chief Zeman came to me and said, Deputy Chief Keith Jackson is retiring, but I have the person to fill in and take his place that is the next person up, that I think that if I did leave to become the chief of police in Chicago, that this person would be the person that I think would be a good person to follow in my footsteps. And she mentioned Keith Cross's name, and I said, that's my boy. We go way back, and I respect you. I respect, coming up through the ranks, from, the community that I grew up in, knowing that, that you love this city as much as I now, I'm the mayor. I was elected to this spot, and I've been here for only 3 years. You guys have worked for this city for decades and have given blood, sweat, and tears in making us the city we are today. So when I see somebody that, I came up with from, a junior high student and, high school student that is putting the time in and that loves the city as much as I do, and both of them, I know Kristen's from the West Side. We ain't gonna throw no shade at her about that, but when they put the time in and show the love for the city of Aurora to help make this city the best city it possibly can be, man, it makes me proud to say that I'm the mayor. So, man, thank you for agreeing to accept the position as deputy chief. Thank you, Kristen, for being a the best chief that, that I've ever worked with, and I know as an alderman for a number of years, and I, worked with a number of chiefs. But I call you guys the Fab Five, so I know you got a new member of the Fab Five coming in, once all the retirement's going on. But I look forward to continue to work with you guys and help continue to make Aurora strong.
Thank you.
Clayton.
As we wrap up, getting so much love on social media across the city, across the country, people weighing in, they're expressing their love. As we wrap up, asking you to weigh in on the final question, starting with Chief, the Commander, then the Mayor. Our tagline for the last year and 3 months has been Aurora Strong. Under this next month or beyond, we can say we are Aurora Strong, but for right now, we're stronger at home.
Yeah.
You
Absolutely.
that question, Chief, Deputy Chief, Mayor, why are we stronger at home for right now? Chief?
I think we're stronger at home because, as I mentioned, that human transference is that we have to make sure that, the very core of community is a healthy community. And we cannot have a healthy community unless we take measures ourselves individually. We are responsible for our own health. We are responsible for our own actions. And we have to make sure in this moment in time that our actions could potentially negatively affect someone else. Just like violence begets violence, this is the same kind of notion. And so we have to take matters into our own hands, and we are absolutely stronger at home because that will make us an even stronger community.
Thank you, Deputy Chief.
Yeah, I agree. The thing is we all just have to do our part. It seems like not that long ago when we started learning about the virus, this was something that happened somewhere else. And that's no longer the case. I even remember, the questions they asked, have you been out of the country? Well, that question is obsolete now because the virus is here. And in order for us to stop it from traveling from person to person to person, we have to, again, contain ourselves. It's going to be a little bit uncomfortable for a little while, but in the end, it's going to be worth it. So we all just have to do our part to get rid of this virus, and so we can go back to living our lives, our day-to-day lives, and get a sense of normalcy back.
Yeah. Mayor.
I'm going to say we are Aurora strong. We just have to stay at home to continue to be strong for our community and make sure that we protect the health of all of our citizens. Our babies, our young people and teenagers, our seniors. We have to do this for each other, and and our willingness to do that shows our strength. So, Aurora strong, baby.
So 3 of you, thanks to the community for watching. Next week, the Mayor will be Facebook Live here with our superintendents.
There you go. Can I get some? Yeah. There you go.
It all the way through. But thank you all. Thank you to the Aurora community. We know we have another meeting in 6 minutes.
We
So
do.
we'll see you guys soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for signing on. Bye, friends.